We're usually so much better, so I swear to God. Boys, welcome. It's How to Get Good. My name is Michael.
And I'm Benny, and this is the How to Get Good podcast.
We're two guys. We're on a journey of self-improvement, and we want to take you on that journey with us.
Each episode, we look at a different aspect of health as it pertains to self-improvement.
We've talked about things like HIIT training, VO2 max, microplastics, but occasionally we get to speak to very impressive people and find out what makes them tick. Today's guest, you might get, well, if you know him, it's Tyler Martin. He's an Olympian. He is an entrepreneur, and most importantly, he's a dad. And we're going to find out how elite mindset has, I guess, shaped and changed the way he operates. Tyler, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me, boys.
Right, at How to Get Good, we love diving into the stats, the quantitative stuff. So let's get hard, fast questions out just to get a little bit of analytics about you, Tyler, right? So height and weight.
194 and about 97 kilos.
What was peak?
As in worst? As in like when I was my fittest?
Either or.
Height hasn't changed much, but the weight, when I was playing sport properly, like for Australia, at my peak fitness, I was about 95. And then at my least fittest, my weight peak, I suppose, I got out to about 108.
So you blow out, you don't lose.
Yeah, I stress eat and boredom eat. So that's my, I guess, affliction.
Age?
34.
And in case we didn't touch it, water polo was Tyler's sport of choice. When did you start training for water polo?
I started when I was about 12 and then took it a bit more seriously when I was about 14 or 15.
Were you swimming competitively before you found water polo?
Not really, just pretty typical Australian childhood, played a bit of everything.
Let's just talk numbers. What time did you wake up this morning?
6:30.
Normal breakfast?
Scrambled eggs and cottage cheese more recently.
Yeah, bit of pro-y.
Little bit of protein, but sometimes just fast as well. So depending if I've binged the night before or not.
What's the family setup?
In terms of
the Martin household?
I've got my partner Sophie, and then 3.5-year-old Teddy and 1-year-old Max.
Handful?
Nightmare. No, good nightmare. cut.
I tell you what, the greatest PR for not having kids is talking to parents. I swear to God. Now, how did you make your way here today?
I scooted here on like a Vespa type scooter.
Okay,
not a razor.
Not a razor, no.
And just run us through your quick normal morning routine.
An optimal morning routine is get up at 6 o'clock. If I'm training, I'll try and train 6 till 7. Come home, help sort kids out and breakfast and sort kids out. Take one of them to daycare. This morning wasn't like that. It was kind of get woken up by my toddler out of bed. Black coffee, run late to a meeting. My partner took Teddy to daycare. So it's depending on a whole different number of variables, but a perfect would be up at 6 and get some movement in.
And what time did you go to bed?
Very late last night. Watched the Boomers and Serbia.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Let's say the Boomers aren't just letting us down.
Yeah. Normal bedtime. I'm normally in bed by about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and sometimes am guilty of doom scrolling and sometimes am good, read a book and fall asleep quickly.
And do you sleep straight through? Do you wake up a lot? Have you been a good sleeper historically?
Historically good sleeper. With our youngest is not historically a good sleeper, so he's affected my sleep a lot, but generally sleep right through now.
What was harder, training for the Olympics or training to be a professional athlete or operating as an entrepreneur with new kids?
Definitely the latter. I think it's training for elite sport is a pretty selfish endeavour and pretty routine and regimented. Kids just throws a spanner, so where you don't really have complete agency of your life.
Would you say that having kids whilst operating a full-time job and goals is the hardest thing you've ever done?
Yeah. Second kid.
Jesus.
Shout out to Max. He'll listen to this one day and I love him dearly, but he's been a big stress test.
And so maybe on that, so if we look at, certain habits and protocols or whatever that allowed you to go, on top of talent to build into what was competing at an Olympic level and then transitioning that into kind of modern day fatherhood. Yeah. Is there anything that kind of stands out from like the mentality of, what you had to develop in professional sport and how you approach kind of life today?
Yeah, I think so. And it's a pretty I guess, well-trodden path or characteristics, but definitely resilience is probably the most important. So I've played thousands of professional competitive sporting games in my life, and I've probably lost 40% of them. So you inherently get accustomed to what setbacks and losses alike. And obviously in those games, there's lots of minor setbacks. I missed out on multiple teams throughout my whole sort of water polo journey. And I think being resilient and building that threshold of resilience. So, when I was younger, missing a shot would really get me down. And as you get older, missing a shot on goal didn't matter. So you just build that threshold and work that, I guess, callus of resilience up.
Not to bring up anything, but like talk me through your worst sporting moment and how you dealt with the fallout.
Yeah, so my worst sporting moment was a really weird one. And it was basically the selection for the Olympic Games in 2016. So my journey to being selected was a unique one in that I had to pull out of the contention for 2012. I'm not saying I would have made it for sure, but I had an injury that sort of meant that I couldn't really put my best foot forward in that space. And then I was a reasonable mainstay of the team through the next cycle and played a few games in the lead up to 2012 as well. And then on the 11th hour of 2016, the coach decided that he was actually going to go in a different direction from positional, and said, "Actually, not giving the story the time and emotional."
So there was an expectation that you'd created in your brain that like bags were packed to a degree.
Not really, because there was a feeling in the team at the time of there was a lot, like no one was safe. There was maybe 2 or 3 of 13 that felt comfortable.
Yep.
Everyone else was like, shit, there's who knows what direction he's going to go, like pick this position or that position or whatever it may be. So there was a lot of uncertainty around that. And I was like, well, I'm probably a decent chance, but I'm not packing bags or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the call on it's crazy what your mind does, because he said, okay, I'm going to call everyone and tell him if you're in or not, but I'm going to call the guys who you're not in first. It was a horrible way of doing it and something that I wouldn't advise. And he said, I'm going to make calls on a certain day. And I saw the coach's name flash on my phone. I'd done nothing that day.
I would have shit myself.
Played 100 games for Australia at that point, was in the team, I'm packing my bags to Rio, but I'm somewhat confident of going, but still nervous. And I saw his name and the heart.
Had you done enough?
I thought I had, yeah, I thought I had. And then I saw the coach's name pop on the screen. It was about midday, and I thought, okay, in my mind, I kind of did the mental.
Is that early?
Gymnastics. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not early.
Is he a 6 a.m. riser?
So I'm like, is that? And then
I'm nervous hearing this.
Yeah, and I remember I was on the call, and I was like, Anthony, and it was pretty normal-ish conversation to start for the first couple of sentences. And then he said, hey, look, Tyler, I've decided that instead of I won't get too specific about positions, but I'm going to take an extra player on this side, and then everything sort of just stopped, and I didn't really compute anything beyond that. And by that stage, I'd played 3 or 4 years overseas, missed, the classic story, but missed weddings, missed birthdays, missed so many things. Played overseas on my first contract overseas, professional, was €200 per month. I was 19 years old. I got free meals and accommodation, but
depending which country you were in, that could have been good money. There are some former Yugoslav republics, so that's probably good coin.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, not where I was in northern Italy. But and everything was about making that team, and then once you make the team, achieving at the Olympics. And I just remember being completely silent, and then I basically just we hung up the phone, and I was just stunned. I was alone.
Were you super cordial with him? You're like, nah, mate, it's all good, no stress. Yeah, no, you do what you have to do.
I think I was. No, I just was like, I don't know. I was completely stunned. And then
Were you alone?
I was alone, and I wanted to be alone.
Okay.
And then I messaged him about half an hour after and said, can we have a face-to-face conversation? I just wanted, I thought it wasn't a good way of doing so. We gave thousands of hours to try and to the cause, not paid him. We ended up meeting, and it was quite emotional. I was completely in tears. He was in tears, and he's a Croatian coach who's pretty steely normally. So it was, I could understand.
What was his name?
This guy's name was Elvis Fatovic.
Elvis,
so
that's right,
Elvis, hey, the reincarnation. But he, and then basically the option was, the expectation before the selection was that anyone who didn't make it would be part of the training camp and basically and travel to Europe and do all that shit, go to the camp that had the media day, all the stuff that you see on TV, the Qantas tickets, all that kind of stuff, kind of be part of that, not get it because you're not going, but be part of it and support the team. And if someone gets sick or someone gets injured or form can change, all that bullshit, which we'll get to in a second, but was all like, oh, do the right thing. And I was basically like, well, fuck this. Like
How old were you?
I was 26. So looking back, it's young, but
You can still make some rash decisions when you're 26.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think like people are like, oh, you're a full-grown adult. Yeah, sure you are. But we're all capable of like.
Well, and in that
being
emotion, like you put
reaction.
everything on hold more or less. And I remember, I first thing I did is okay, I need a few days to think about this and get back to you. And I spoke to people I respected in the sport and out of the sport, and I just thought, okay, well if this is going to be my destiny in the sport, I'm going to try and at least finish on my own terms. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to go. I'm going to travel overseas. I'm going to train. I'm not going to go to the media days and all that shit. Like I deleted social media. I deleted like everything. Wasn't returning calls. Just sent I put a message, I remember, on Facebook saying, hey guys, this is like, which sounds a little bit important at the time, but I wanted to say, I don't want to speak to anyone. So I'm just going dark for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And then I was going to meet the team in Europe and train and do the right thing. And
What's
anyway,
the average life, not life expectancy,
The
but
career?
like career expectancy on water? Like is 26 prime, or is it sort of one where like you can hit your prime in your 32, 33?
you can hit it late, but in Australia, where it's not life, we don't have a professional league here per se.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be making that 26, like 24 to 28 is our prime. Europeans can go to 35, but it's a livelihood there. So it's like I didn't want to do it. I wouldn't do another. I said at the time, I'm not going to do another cycle. Another 4 years.
Yeah.
So
And so you at the point where you haven't made it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in the starting team, but you can come and support. And if someone gets injured or whatever,
experience,
and you're going to go along
not
anyway.
not even the Olympics. It's come travel to us. Dubrovnik training camp, Hungary training camp, Rome training
I'm
camp,
not even go to Rio.
and then see you guys at the airport. You guys go.
Wow.
Tyler, see you later. Thanks. See you at the next training camp starting next year.
But you love the boys as well. Like
I did, but I was.
You can right to be dirty.
I was like seeing my friends being like the happiest they've ever been and all this and I was just like, so anyway, I met them in Dubrovnik and I was playing well actually. It's funny what like freedom does and everything like that. And I was kind of hopeful, randomly thinking, okay, well maybe I'll still get a chance here.
Is there a chance, right? Like, because they make the call, but if you have just like a freak, they're like, oh wow, like we've put him at like left wing here and it's really his spot. Like, or is it like,
well,
they have to put the team sheet in 3 months before?
that's the thing. So
Drama, ladies and
he kind
gentlemen.
of said, okay, there's always a chance. And I was actually like I said, the shackles were off me. I was saying, hey Elvis, we have a chat every couple of days. Let's have a chat. See how I'm going. See how I'm feeling. Because I was like, the other guys that got cut didn't come. So they said, no, I'm not going. No one goes. It's you're done. The team's a team. And then I thought, okay, I'm playing well. The team wasn't playing well. We had a couple of hard losses against a few teams, and I was like, hey, what is going to happen? And then in the end, it turns out that teams were submitted, and there was a lot of admin involved. A couple of weeks before, I remember I was in the gym with the physio because I was just doing my own thing. I was like, well, I'm just gonna do my own thing, still stay fit for me, but this is
free physio.
Exactly, free physio, one of the very few perks. And I said, I'm probably just going to go tomorrow. I've done it. I'm not going to go to Rome. I don't want to do 3 days in Rome.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, like it was getting towards the end of the tour. I'd done a couple of weeks. I'm seeing my friends post on social media.
Did it feel embarrassing at all?
Yeah, massively. I was like, this is shit. Like I've been identified by this position and I've played 100 games for Australia. I've been a contributor. And if I don't go to the Olympics, no one in this country gives a shit.
Was the person who took your position younger or older than you?
It wasn't probably a like for like. It was just the balance of the team. So it's like not one person.
Right. So there was no feeling like, oh, I'm getting older. No feeling of insecurity.
Not about that. It was more
good.
like I was just embarrassed. I was like, I've given everything to this. I think I should be in this team, and I'm not. And like people, it was weird. I was thinking what other people thought, but we have this thing, and we're in the Olympics now. Everyone cares about the Olympics. I went to 3 World Champs, 2 World Cups. No one gives a shit. No one really gives a shit. So that your barometer for success.
Unless you're a water polo specific fan, and those are
100%. It's like 3 people.
Well, it's same sort of like with skate. Like I watch the skateboarding at the Olympics, but I'm also someone who watches the street league. I'm a fan of the sport, but broadly the Olympics, the appeal that you get, like that's once every 4 years.
Exactly, and to cut a long story short.
Well, you were chatting to the physio, right?
Yeah, and I was just like, okay, I'm going. I've done my day. I think I'm proud of what I've done. Yeah. I've turned up. I've performed. I've done the right thing by the team. But now I'm not going to go to Rome and then wave you guys off at the airport. You get all your Olympic kit and I just go home and wallow in the middle of winter. That night, one of our guys got injured. One of the guys in the team got injured. And literally the next day, it's like, okay, Tyler, you're in.
Oh!
And it was like, just crazy, surreal. weird. I was also like, I feel this is also an embarrassing. I was embarrassed not to make it, and I was embarrassed to make it in these circumstances.
Gift horse, mate. Let's not check the teeth.
But then we ended up playing the tournament. We actually performed well. Tournament sport, lost to the best team by 1 goal, missed the quarterfinal. But
dynamic performance by Tyler Martin.
But in the end, I remember, and it was quite vindicating to some degree. But the coach at the end, we had a bit of an after event rap, and he was like, "Hey, I really I made a mistake. I should have picked you in the team from the start. I really
Hollywood, you need to be.
Well, if we won a gold medal, it would have been great. But maybe Hollywood. But it was quite vindicating at the end. But it was like definitely. I mean, it's a long way of answering your original question.
It's a great way.
But that was easily that probably 2-month period from not making it to finishing the Olympics was definitely the most roller coaster, hardest setback I had in sport.
And so you've done all this training. You've been kind of rejected at the door when you were hopeful and feeling confident. You have this kind of crushing defeat. You kind of brush yourself off. You go over anyway. You put in this effort, and the freedom that comes from like giving up that sense of being judged and trying, like that abandonment of fear allows you to play some of the best polo maybe you've played. And then you get into the team by fortune or fate, who knows? And then you roll into the Olympics and you guys have a great tournament. And narrowly miss out on kind of outperforming massively. And so at the end of all of that, what do you take from that in terms of how you've pushed on to the next stages of your life?
Yeah, so I think I talked about it before, but being resilient and like not necessarily giving up per se, and I guess you could really extrapolate a lot of things, the power of manifestation, all that kind of stuff. But I think what I really learned is just hanging tough and
showing up.
Showing up, and that's something I live by as well. Actually, is just getting yourself being in the room. So being prepared and available and ready, and letting opportunity show up.
How do you find the energy? So going back to this time when you're not in the team, you're still in the camp and you're training there in Dubrovnik or wherever it is. How are you finding the energy to get up each day and to go in and do what is a very physically exerting sport, which is also quite brutal at times? How are you getting up day and day, even though there's no goal anymore here? Yeah,
it was really hard. It was like a real test of sort of mental.
Did you trick yourself a little?
Well, I basically made it. I mean, this is everyone knows the example, or a lot of people know the example of Michael Jordan, almost making up stories to fire himself up. And this guy said this, and I'm going to beat this guy. Yeah. I was kind of not doing that to that degree, but I was like, okay, I'm going to show that I'm definitely better than the position that I'm currently in, which is not in the team. And I was just like, every day I'm going to show that I'm one of the top performers in this thing. And that was hard. Like, that was manufactured. And
Tyler took that personally.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Have you kind of always been competitive? Like, do you think that's what got you into competitive sport, obviously, but then to stay at the top of your game, have you always found an enemy, so to speak?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought it like an enemy, but maybe, yeah. I've always sort of thrived in that competition and found a reason to get the motivation to push on.
Do you think that this is a nature or nurture element that created this drive inside you, right? Like, that's pretty, to push through all of this, knowing that, you've got a life to live after water polo, and is this holding you back, yada, yada. Do you reckon this is a mum and dad thing, potentially? Or do you reckon this is just, Aussie school sport that, put the dog in you? What do you reckon? Where do you reckon that edge came from?
I don't 100% know, because my parents, I wouldn't say, are super competitive, wildly supportive, but not really, really competitive. I think it was probably a combination. I went to a pretty competitive high school, but more academically competitive than anything else. So there was that element there. And then just playing sport and having one of my best friends, AJ, who went to 3 Olympics, him and I would always push each other. So we were best friends and still are, but if he was getting up doing an extra program, I was getting up as well. So I think having that was
rivalry.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, I suppose it was a rivalry, but it was motivating. We both were we weren't competing for spots, but yeah, having that sort of person to push me, and then that just sort of, I guess, transformed.
You've got a physique that's pretty aspirational. You what, 6'3"? You're 6'3".
Yeah. Soft blue green eyes.
Yeah, mate, I've fallen asleep. I'm dreaming. I'm in dreamland here.
I hope the post-production team can do something here.
We'll lift the blues. Was it always water polo?
I probably was the.
Did you excel in anything else?
I would like to think that I'm reasonable at some sports, but not to the same, I guess, not as pointy.
When were you all in on water polo?
About 14. So I was playing a bit of everything, bit of AFL, but bit of rugby, but water polo I was the best at, and I was enjoying it the most. And then and I didn't really think about the financial side of it.
Well, let's talk about the finances. What was your first paycheck as a professional athlete? I remember you said it was like $200.
Yeah, €200. Yeah, for a month.
But you can't survive on that.
No, so overseas it was flights, accommodation, meals, and accommodation. Did I say accommodation twice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Double roof, brother.
Academically competitive.
Yeah. That was high school.
Yeah, right. So you're in northern Italy, obviously dream location. You're young doing that. It seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
€200 isn't. I mean, even with inflation, it's not.
No. I mean, it was terrible. It was a means to achieving what I wanted to do. So I reached out to the coach and said, "Hey, I'm this 19-year-old Australian guy. I'm good enough to play in your team in the top league in Italy. I'll do it. What can you give me?" And he's like, "Okay, well, we can give you accommodation, flights, and 2 meals a day, and €200." That's like done.
The Hello Sports boys spoke to Magnuson, and they were explaining what the Swimming Australia contract was, and I think he was saying the highest one, like you're a world record holder. I think it was 30K. That was the number I remember, and the first one I think was 12 or something.
Yeah.
What's the highest water polo contract you can get in terms of value? And then, like, let's say you're the LeBron James of water polo. Where does that sit?
Yeah. So I mean, every national team has their own structure, but like Australia, we might get from the government similar deal. You know, the most I might have got in a year was 20 grand, and the least was like 5 grand.
Okay.
And the best player in the world might be on 150, 180,000 euros.
That's all right.
How
many of them are there?
Not really to be the.
No.
That's the best in the world. That's like 3-time Olympic gold medal. You know.
Yeah.
Who is the LeBron James of water polo?
It's hard now.
Tyler Mann?
No. It depends who. Definitely not if you ask the Rio coach. But there was a couple of good Serbians. Now it's hard to say, but like.
There's no LeBron though.
Maybe a guy called a left-hander from Serbia who's just retired. He had like 2 Olympic golds. Amazing player. So, but he would have been on like 150, 180 euro, which is great in Serbia. But you know, it's not retirement money.
Oh, I mean, if you were in Europe as a pro indoor volleyball player, like the top indoor players are getting 5 times that.
Exactly. And then you got cycling, hockey, same deal. Hockey's much more. So there's
handball.
Yeah. It's not.
And then like football.
And then obviously you take the next step. Yeah, exactly.
We've talked a lot about the resilience that you've developed, but let's talk about like any assistance we can get in terms of psychology, counselling. Mental health awareness, like what have, and I hate saying mental health awareness, I think it's such a schlocky term. Yeah. But let's talk about the sports psychology that you were provided with, and let's talk about any sort of like psychology or counselling you've gotten independently. Yeah,
so I think we had like sports psychologists that were pretty hit and miss.
Is that just a checklist thing for Sports
Australia?
A
little bit. It felt a little bit like that. So I didn't get a whole lot of it. We did stuff, but I didn't find it super beneficial. And yeah, I think like I'm a big believer in it. I just think it needs to be like anything. It needs to have that rapport and that like credibility.
Yeah.
And if you pull down to, I guess, playing professional sport, there's obviously pressure every time you're playing. There's performance attributes, etc. But then some games and tournaments are bigger and higher stakes. Yeah. What are you doing pre-game? Like, how do you respond to pressure generally? And then when you're feeling that, what are the steps you're taking actively to prepare to perform well at the highest level?
Yeah, so table stakes and sleep nutrition, basically. Supplementation, all that kind of stuff is basically table stakes at that level. So you need to be getting adequate sleep. You need to be eating well for you. I like to keep things a bit lighter. So like I went through a phase of listening to real big pump up music, but a sport like water polo.
Give me a pump up track. What are you talking about?
Maybe Eminem back in the day. 50 Cent, who knows, those kind of ones. But basically, it's a sport that if you get too fired up, you could be on the bench because you've been excluded for the game and things like that. So it's like not an absolute raw power thing. So I actually kept it quite light. Found a few people on the team who were the same, had a few jokes,
just relaxed.
Kept it, super relaxed. And then more recently, even though I'm not playing at the elite level, like playing just for my club team, I've adopted some breathing techniques, which I've just found to be really helpful. And yeah, they're basically, I didn't really kind of overcomplicate it.
So it sounds very much like environment for you. So like breathing, you're like down regulating kind of pretty aggressively from an environmental perspective. And then the people you're surrounding yourself with are light, the lead up into the games. You're not overthinking it. You're just trying to keep it fun, keep it playful, and then keep it free.
And the other thing I would say is I had a mini superstition, but it needed to be super controllable. And so my two, I guess, mental switches, were when I jumped in the water, which happened every game.
Yeah,
That's good.
That was, I would like, there'd be a mental and physical sort of
You're
switch.
on.
Yeah.
And then I would like to score the last goal before, the last goal in warm up. So like, even if if I hadn't scored him all day, I'm like, goalie, get out of the way. I'm just going to flick this in. It was just like two things that I could really control that gave me some sort of, internal confidence.
What's I see, like we're all wearing a hoop, like, and it doesn't have to be that.
He does it all the time.
Like the whoop,
Whoop.
whiskey. Why are you saying it like that? Whoop. Anyway, what external tool, have you found to be the biggest, I guess, helper in your like fitness or well-being journey?
I think Whoop's been a really good one. It
doesn't have to be. I just noticed it.
Sponsored by.
A hoop.
But no, I think because it's just pretty easy, right? And I've gone down the path of being too analytical, but I think it needs to be sustainable. So it's like, what are my easy metrics to measure? Recovery and sleep. And then I just try and get in a couple of other wellness check markers a week, like a couple of saunas, get the body moving every day for 20 minutes, which is all I can really commit to. Like get sustainably. I know I can go for a 20-minute walk or run. I might be able to beat that and go to the gym for an hour and a half, but at least my baseline is 20 minutes. And that just sort of starts that virtuous cycle.
Just zone 2 stuff,
Yeah, even honestly, sometimes just like, I've had a prick of a day. I'm just going to go for a walk after the kids go down. And it's still my 20 minutes a day. It's still like I'm achieving something. And it might be zone 1, but at least it's something.
Okay, and then so maybe to transition out of that, you've gone into business, and you've also got kids, you're juggling at that time. Like, talk to us about how you've developed structure in your day. So obviously that 20 minutes a day is your time, but how have you managed to create structure in your day to ensure that you're still achieving goals, like professionally?
Yeah, so to answer in a word, poorly to start, like really poorly to start. I think particularly 1 to 2 kids, was a massive jump for me, just what my personal experience. But what I've done to wrestle that back a little bit I think I'm a pretty high agency person. And for a while I slipped into a funk of, this is just being a dad. This is just being in startup or whatever. And I think I lost a bit of agency around that. So I've decided, number 1, the kids don't wake me up. My alarm wakes me up. I'm taking that. If they happen to wake up 10 minutes, okay, so
that's a bold, I won't wake up with a kid. Like,
well,
I think
no, in terms of, it usually doesn't happen that way. It's normally like, we don't set an alarm because one of the kids will wake us up and we'll get up. So it's actually seizing that first little moment of the day, which has been really helpful. And then I've tried to time block a little bit better. I have some sort of routine. My partner doesn't love routine, and I don't intrinsically love it either, but I think we have to have some sort of routine and plan. Try and time block when I'm doing, deep work or thinking stuff, and when I'm doing admin stuff, and try and not get on that admin hamster wheel too much. And then we've slowly found our way into leave it more or less a certain time every day. I'm back more or less a certain time every day. And that kind of bookends my days, whereby, yes, I do often work outside of that, like in the evenings, but just trying to, I guess, time block a little bit. But the main thing, honestly, is just making sure I start my day on my terms.
And then you get through a day, you haven't achieved the things you want. How does that feel? And then the next day, how are you kind of starting again? Because, it's not a traditional job. Being an entrepreneur, you have to no one cares if you don't show up the next day.
Yeah.
So how have you kind of managed that emotionally?
And give us a quick shout out of the business as well, obviously, for the viewers who might not know.
So I run a non-alcoholic drinks business called Yes You Can Drinks. Go and clear us out online and in Woolies Metro.
The Paloma plum is delicious.
Hey, that was a limited edition.
Go
our core range, the spritz, the yuzu, the peach. The plum was great. We'll keep an eye out for that. We might relaunch that again.
I was a big fan of the plum.
Yeah, our only buyer. Cut that. What I've recently started doing, what I've really been finding beneficial, is literally at the end of the day, it's like what I write down in my diary or Notion or whatever. Literally, because I talk about sustainability, I don't want to overcommit to things that I can't do. 1 win for the day, 1 point of attention, and 1 thing I'm grateful for, and that actually bookends my day. So then, that generally, like that tension point, might be something I didn't get done or whatever, which will then inform what the next day looks like. But I do want to get better at planning the next day the night before. I've been okay at it, but I think that would be the next step into a sustainable progression.
when you're on the water polo field, I guess you had competitors to benchmark yourself with. Do you have a system where you sort of like try to benchmark yourself with like a bunch of fellow-minded entrepreneurs, or how do you operate there?
Who's the rival now?
Yeah.
In the current space, there's a couple of incumbents that I guess are rivals, but we're in this like.
You're both building categories, so it's
yeah.
sort of like
So it is less that. I've probably been guilty in the past of benchmarking myself against people doing anything, but at similar ages or stages in life, which is, I think, probably quite pervasive in our culture at the moment. Like we're like, oh, this guy or this girl's doing this, and I'm not doing this and this, and it's a pretty
the thief of joy.
It is. So I've been really mindful about not doing that and just staying focused. I think probably I look at some of our competitors as what they are as the competitors. I think I need some of the protocols of previous guests though, because I'm just like figuring shit out as I go.
Well, I think that's a really good way to like finish this. Like we're all still figuring shit out, and like if we have someone who is like an Olympian, an entrepreneur with like a successful business, managing 2 kids, who's still comfortable enough to say, I don't really particularly know what I'm doing, but I'm just doing incremental things to make my days better, to get good. I think that's helpful for anyone listening. That's like, fuck, what am I doing? I'm 38. I've got no clue. And to hear that from you, I think it's sort of
got equally no clue. And I've also been guilty of trying to find the perfect system, structure, protocol. And I think that's what I've reverted back since being a dad, and particularly last year or 2 years, is what can I actually sustainably commit to versus trying to have a hack for everything. And I think slowly but surely laddering these sustainable elements of a protocol together and finding out, actually, I can do 20 minutes a day. I can do 3 things at the end of every day.
Yes, you can.
Exactly.
Yes, you can.
It stands out to me. You know, you've obviously spoken about like resilience and just showing up, but then it also seems like this kind of daily gratitude is important in your life, and then this just incremental improvement without putting too much pressure to have the perfect solution. It's kind of show up the next day, do it again, add something and make it a little bit better, take a little bit more control. And then that's kind of one step after the other, 1 foot after the other, and it seems to be working for you so far.
Very good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Protocols.
Yes, you can.
Hell yeah. Yes, you can.
Plum.
Tyler Martin, Benny Kleist, Michael Beveridge. This is How to Get Good. Thanks for joining us. Good on you, mate. We've never handshaked.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Pleasant.